Welcome on the cosmic atom when God mocks you. The devil cannot harm you unless he needs to safeguard his investment. Let it sink in. You've heard about bodyguards, but have you ever been so spiritually deadly that even hell had to back down? Pay careful attention. Most individuals don't understand what it means to be selected. They believe it is about favor, miracles, and positive vibrations. But here's the hard reality. They do not inform you that being selected entails becoming a walking contradiction. You are assaulted, despised, and envied, but you are miraculously protected in ways that defy logic. Here's a crazy fact. Neuroscience research shows that profound trauma survivors often gain increased intuition and resilience. Imagine mixing it with spiritual anointing. That is not simply survival. It is divine mutation, and it is the one you have chosen. You are not simply covered by God. You are so unique that your existence bore a spiritual do not touch sign. People attempted to break you, but heaven had warnings. Demons attempted to approach, but even they were scared. You grew so engrossed in divine purpose that even the devil had to speak. Yeah, not this one. Touching them may get me fired. But here's a twist. Now, those same individuals who sought to destroy you are sitting in remorse, gripping their chests like victims, sobbing in group chat, and monitoring your glow as if it owed them closure. Wondering how someone they believed they had buried was resurrected with vigor, resilience, and brilliance. So sit tight, because what you're going to hear is more than simply a message. It is a revelation. A spiritual could explain why your anointing has not only baffled your opponents, but even shook the hierarchy of darkness itself. Let's get to it. Number 1, your anointing was very sincere. Even the opponent had to yield. Your anointing was quiet, yet it was toxic to everything phony around you. You are not required to act, proclaim, or show off. Your presence alone made spirits uncomfortable. And it's not just humans. We're talking about forces, energies, and worlds that most people don't know exist. That's how genuine your calling is. You were born with a spiritual voltage so strong that darkness had to double-check before moving on. Some victims were assaulted, ripped apart, and killed totally. However, there was an unusual delay in reaching you. Things would get close, but never hit. Plots would develop, then disintegrate in midair. People would attempt to condemn you, only to curse themselves. That is not luck. That is divine jurisdiction. Even the adversary had to take a step back and say, "We can't touch this one recklessly because messing with you would be against heavenly protocol." Heaven protects some individuals as if they were kings. You're one of them. The strangest aspect was that you had no idea how high your rating was. You were only trying to survive. You were only trying to recuperate and be normal. Meanwhile, hell was conducting emergency meetings and wondered why you were still alive. See, the opponent is wiser than people give him credit for. He does not spend energy fighting wars he knows he cannot win. So, like you, he attempted subtle paths past people. Betrayal, deception, and misunderstanding. Even yet, something would always come between you and the full power of your anointing. It was not about you being flawless. It was about you becoming picked. And since you were selected, the spiritual world marked you as off-limits. Your life was characterized not by tragedy or failure, but by God Himself. And now they're forced to sit back and watch you shine. He couldn't touch you, so you may stand and walk with complete authority. So, like everyone else, He is watching as you grow unstoppable. Number 2, they didn't just regret losing you. They regret ever having mishandled holy terrain. They assumed they were dealing with an ordinary individual who they could play with, reject, or manipulate as they saw fit. They didn't understand they were mishandling something precious. You weren't just another friend, lover, or family member. You were divine access, a living conduit for grace, healing, and ascension. God has put you in their lives as a lifeline, but rather than acknowledging it, they insulted it. They disregarded it, and now the regret goes deeper than losing you. It's the creeping, terrible awareness that they've insulted something far larger than you. People do not usually realize what they are doing until it is too late. They believe they were playing games with your emotions, but they were really playing Russian roulette with a spiritual mission. Certain individuals in life come with warning labels direct from heaven, which should be treated with care. You are one of these folks. You did not come to them by chance. You were sent strategically, divinely, and with purpose. However, since you did not arrive in an icebox, they were unable to identify the power you had. They disregarded the blessing since it did not resemble the one they anticipated. Now, remorse is eating them alive, not simply because you're gone, but because their lives have changed since the favor you bestowed upon them. Gone. The tranquility they felt in your presence disturbed the spiritual covering they had no idea you had removed. And all that remains is the memory of someone who was sent from heaven, as well as the reality that you were treated as if you were trash. They expected to walk away with an upgrade, but instead they degraded their whole existence by cutting off a link to divine order. You were more than simply a person. You were an instance of divine harmony. And they didn't just lose you. They lost the favor that you brought with you. That is the type of remorse that will not go away. That is the kind of loss that is felt more acutely after you have passed away. Number 3, your purpose was so apparent that hell decided you were more valuable undisturbed. You were such a danger to hell's plan that the devil had to rethink his whole strategy when it came to you. Nor because he loved you, nor because he was merciful, but because he recognized something in you that could not be defined and certainly could not be overcome. You had such a tremendous calling that striking you directly would have done more harm to his own realm than allowing you to survive. Instead of blatantly destroying you, he attempted to study, delay, and divert you rather than remove you. That is how holy your duty is. You were designated for such a powerful heavenly effect that even hell had to be cautious. The devil is not afraid of churchgoers or those who speak loudly. He fears people who go purposefully, silently, and precisely. You were a walking interruption to demonic systems, even if you didn't realize it. Your presence altered atmospheres. Your words shattered unseen bonds. You were an earthquake walking around in human flesh, and everyone knew it. That explains why so many unusual things have occurred in your life. People are turning on you for no reason. Opportunities unexpectedly destroyed friendships that were ideal one minute and crumbled the next. It was not poor luck. It was spiritual interference. But even so, there remained a limit. The strikes would come near, but not complete. They would affect your surrounds, but not your essence. You would lose possessions, but not your mind. That was not luck. That was a heavenly constraint. And here is the bit that most folks miss. Your anointing was too useful to the kingdom of light for the devil to risk taking it too far. He knew God would intervene. He knew heaven would send troops. Instead, he sought to keep you fatigued, preoccupied, and questioning yourself. But even it did not work. You're now awake. Now you are aware. And the enemy's scheme has failed. Because once a chosen one understands who they really are, not even hell can stop them. You are not only protected, you were saved because your mission is too important for anything or anybody to ruin. Number 4, you proved that destiny cannot be canceled, only delayed. They really believed they could terminate you. They felt that if they dragged your name through the dirt, drove you to your limit, and tired you out with relentless pandemonium, you would vanish for forever. They didn't comprehend you weren't constructed with surface-level strength. You were created on purpose. That means no matter how many times they push you down, something divine kept bringing you back up because your destiny isn't determined by other people's beliefs, deadlines, or sabotage. It's built into your being. They couldn't cancel it. They could only postpone it. They tried everything. They ruined up your mental health. They launched an assault on your character. They spoke behind your back, laughing in your face, but secretly wishing you'd collapse. And for a time, it seemed like their approach was succeeding. You remained silent. You vanished. You felt lost, but you were not destroyed. You were being purified while they laughed. You were learning, while they were enjoying your stillness. You were recharging your power. The setback was planned, and the delay was divine. Now that they're watching, your research is more powerful, sharper, more concentrated than ever. And it's getting to them because they know they didn't only fail to stop you. They accidentally pulled you farther into alignment. You become exactly what they dreaded. Proof that a calling cannot be buried, nor can it be killed. What God poured life into. You did more than simply bounce back. You ascended. And now they're forced to watch what they attempted to obliterate become obvious. But here's the kicker. They were never really battling you. They were battling what you were carrying, a prophecy, a heavenly mandate, and a future that endangered their current life. And now, the reality is unfolding right in front of them. They're not sure whether to be startled, embarrassed, or afraid because they didn't simply lose. They helped shape the version of you that cannot be stopped. Number 5, you puzzle them since you were both a danger and a reflection. You were not loud. You were not attempting to compete. You were only being yourself, walking your truth, doing inner labor, growing in stillness. But even without speaking a word, you shocked them to the core. Not because you assaulted them, but because you mirrored what they were attempting to avoid. You showed the difference between who they purported to be and who they really were. And it made you seem menacing in their eyes. The hatred wasn't always loud. It sometimes took subtle shapes. Backhanded compliments. We had tension and covert competitiveness. However, jealousy was at the bottom of it all. Not because you had more, but because you were more sincere, spiritually connected, and genuine. And this genuineness revealed the masks they were hiding behind. You made them uncomfortable without even trying, so they couldn't love you properly. Because every time they looked at you, they were forced to realize what they missed. You were a walking mirror, reflecting the spiritual void they had filled with materialistic wins, phony confidence, and superficial connections. You didn't have to flaunt anything. Your article exacerbated their confusion. Your intention emphasized their bewilderment. Your light made their shadows difficult to ignore. Instead of utilizing their misery as incentive to improve, they became resentful. They could not figure you out. You were too pure to hate and too strong to control. Too modest to boast, yet too consistent to overlook. You didn't play the game, yet you continued ascending. And the reality is, it broke their hearts because they knew you were genuine. You didn't simply speak about God. You lived with Him, and that degree of honesty convicts others who have based their lives on false assumptions. You weren't attempting to be their adversary, but your presence rendered their justifications useless. When individuals are unable to lower your light, they will flee or attempt to damage the bulb. But none of it worked because you were more than simply a mirror of their potential. You were a reminder of what they had chosen not to become. Number 6, you were assigned to be the exit, but they selected their bonds. You weren't just a human. They were given a chance by you, an opportunity to develop, heal, and break free from generational patterns. They swore they were weary of, but when the time came, they did not enter through the door you symbolized. They slammed it closed, not because they did not recognize your worth, but because the truth you conveyed made them uncomfortable. You arrived with brightness. Light reveals everything. People try hard to stay concealed. You were the answer to our quiet prayers. They forgot. They even whispered. You represented a miraculous interruption that had the potential to transform everything. But when you arrived, they did not acknowledge you as a gift. You did not appear in the form they expected. You did not indulge their dysfunction. You did not let them remain tiny. You questioned their justifications, destroyed their phony narratives, and held up a mirror to everything they needed to face. And for that, they labeled you the issue. The fact is that not everyone really desires freedom. Some folks have grown used to their misery and have returned home. Bondage gets more comfortable when it's all with someone you know. You came to bring healing and progress, but they were unwilling to give up the trauma that made them feel significant. You came providing unconditional love, but they twisted it, pushed it away, and projected their pain onto you. They did not reject you. They rejected what you had sparked in them. You made them feel noticed in ways they were not prepared for. Now they're stuck in the same mess, repeating the same cycles, plagued by the squandered chance. They lost the one person who could have helped them get away. And not because you failed, but because they preferred their comfortable shackles to an unknown breakthrough. You were assigned to be the exit, but they valued the jail more than the price of freedom. And now they must deal with the harsh reality. They crucified cure number 7. They didn't comprehend they were working against their own redemption. They believed they were winning. When they spoke about you behind your back, lied about your identity, and attempted to turn people against you. But they didn't realize that by attacking you, they were waging war on their own breakthrough. You were not merely going through their lives. You were deliberately positioned, sent to mediate, cover, and assist them in unlocking levels in their own destiny. They had no idea what they had access to, but they couldn't look beyond their ego, envy, or insecurity. And in their attempt to bring you down, they damaged their own spiritual lifeblood. You were the one who would have filled the gap for them. You were the one who saw their brokenness, yet decided to love, support, and speak life over them. You were aware of their trauma. You sensed their agony. You were patient with their malfunctioning. You even attempted to bear weights that were not yours. And yet, they transformed you into the villain in a scenario in which you were the only one attempting to assist. They were not just betraying a buddy. They were denying a heavenly covering. Because, whether they realized it or not, your prayers were keeping the doors open. Your presence was altering the spiritual atmospheres in their favor. You were waging conflicts that they had no idea they were in. But treachery has repercussions, spiritual ones. What they hurled at you returned, but with more force. Because attempting to destroy someone God has allocated to you is more than simply malicious behavior. You are acting in defiance of heaven's orders. They are now dealing with the aftermath. Things are disintegrating. There is no more peace. Doors are closed. The precise misery they intended you to experience is now sitting in their lap. Not because you want a tragedy upon them, but because they encouraged it by cutting off the blessing that was intended to elevate them higher. They weren't conspiring against anybody. They were conspiring against their own salvation. And there is a loss that no apologies can reverse. Number 8, those who ridiculed your anguish are now choked by their own quiet. They did not give assistance throughout the most difficult times in your life. They provided entertainment. They observed your struggle as if it were a performance. Your tears were the punchline. Your anguish became group chat fodder. Some of them seemed to care, but the smirks behind your back revealed the truth. You were the subject of jokes, gossip, and low-key joy because, deep down, your failure helped them feel better about their own emptiness. They didn't just see your suffering, they nourished off of it. But God does not miss. He saw everything, every tacit betrayal, every subtle hostile jab, every fraudulent check-in. That was basically simply a means to determine how far you had fallen. And while you sat in silence, battling for your life, they were busy heaping insult to injury. They assumed you were done. They assumed your struggle meant you'd never rise again. However, they misjudged who they were insulting, since the tables have now turned, and not quietly. You didn't simply bounce back. You came back bright, growing, and guarded, and then their voices disappeared. The same people who laugh the loudest are unable to express themselves, not because they are mature, but because guilt has held their throats. They can't even say your name without recalling how they used you, how they relished your misery. Your success has become an unavoidable mirror for them. Their silence used to make me feel rejected. It now feels like remorse. The uneasy tension. That's not perplexity, it's humiliation, and it's rather loud. They aren't silent because they're not bothered. They are silent because you remind them of their character or lack thereof. They cannot applaud or congratulate you. You can't help you since it would imply admitting they were wrong, and their pride chokes them more than life ever could. Their silence no longer represents power, but rather punishment, and they deserved it. Number 9, you were the exam. They failed, and now God is using you as an example. You were not merely going through their lives. You were a heavenly test, a well-timed chance masquerading as an ordinary individual. God sent you not for amusement or drama, but to observe how people would react to someone bearing his presence in physical form. Not with titles or ego, but with purity, discernment, and an undeniable anointing. You entered their lives with humility, yet you bore heaven's weight, and the way they handled you showed what was concealed in them. They did not just fail the exam, they failed it loudly, openly, and without remorse. They had the opportunity to respect, cover, support, or just love you, but instead they belittled you, took advantage, attempted to compete, and derided what they did not comprehend. They believed they were rejecting someone commonplace, someone easily replaced, but they were essentially rejecting what they claimed to be praying for, an experience with the supernatural. People may not always know when they are being tested. That's the whole purpose. God does not test character when it is simple. He puts it to the test when it is inconvenient. And instead of rising to the occasion, they make themselves vulnerable. The falsehoods came out. The envy seeped through. The treachery was not a mistake. It was a revelation, and God saw everything. Now they're watching from the sidelines, trapped in the same spot they were before you entered their lives. Only now, with the realization that they missed something uncommon, and God, in his infinite sense of justice, is using your ascent as a lesson. He's making your climb public, your progress apparent, and your glow unmistakable, not to brag, but to instruct. You are evidence of what occurs when divine favor is handled appropriately, while they are proof of what happens when it is mishandled. You were the test, and they failed. But now your life serves as an example, and every benefit that follows is a reminder that God considers the treatment of his chosen ones very personally. Number 10, your presence revealed their demons. That is why they needed to run. You done nothing to them, at least on the surface. You were courteous, respectful, and silent at times. However, the instant you entered their area, something changed. Not because you were loud or belligerent, but because your soul held weight, true spiritual weight, the type that shakes a room rather than just walking into it. You did not have to call anybody out or reveal anyone's secrets. Your presence accomplished everything on its own. They couldn't explain why being around you made them uneasy, and it had nothing to do with your conduct. It has everything to do with the frequency. Your brightness offended the devils. They refused to face. Your honesty contrasted with the falsehoods they believed. Your essay interrupted the pandemonium on which they covertly relied. You did not come to destroy them, but your presence caused their masks to fall. And for some, it seemed like war. People claim you were overly behaving superior to others or altered after recovering. But that's only a projection. What they truly meant was that I couldn't hide in front of you since your progress reminded them of their own stagnation. Your healing mirrored their avoidance, while your honesty made their performance clear. So they withdrew themselves not to safeguard their tranquility, but to prevent internal conflict. You've been provoked. The irony is that they felt you were the poisonous one, but in reality, they couldn't bear to be seen without their shadows. You were not assaulting them. You activated a mirror. When individuals are unwilling to look in the mirror, they blame the person holding it. They did not escape because you were harmful. They left because their demons couldn't breathe near someone who exuded honesty. Instead of admitting they were not ready to adapt, they departed and blamed you for the exposure. But deep down, they understand the reality. Your presence did not harm them. It convinced them, and conviction is difficult when you're trying to hide. Number 11. Even the devil was aware that you had a deadline for your suffering. There's a reason why everything seemed to collapse at once. The pressure, treachery, isolation, and spiritual battle that sprang out of nowhere and refused to let up. It was not arbitrary. It was not because you were doing anything incorrectly. It was because your breakthrough had never been closer. Hell knew it. The adversary does not target persons who are not a danger. He does not spend time battling what has already been lost. But you were on the verge of a heavenly transformation in that terrifying darkness. You have a divine expiry date for your misery. And as it approached, everything attempted to break you. The chaos became louder. The uncertainty grew. Your loved ones become chilly. Opportunities gone. Your mental and emotional strength was challenged in ways that made you doubt everything, even your religion. But that was not punishment. It was the last stretch. That was confirmation that you were on the verge of deliverance. The devil did not strike you because you failed. He was attacking because you were on the verge of breaking free from the cycle, the agony, and the patterns that had held you back. He sensed a change in the spirit, and terror set in because once you stepped out, you were totally healed and you understood your power. You would lose access permanently, and he knew it. That's why the last section stung the most. That is why the assaults seemed personal. Because they were. You weren't just surviving anymore. You were changing. You didn't ask for peace. You were achieving serenity. And that's when hell began firing its last bullets. Not to stop you, but to delay you in the hopes that you would give up before crossing over. But you didn't. You held on. You kept going. And now you're live evidence that sorrow may endure just a night. However, there is a deadline, and the adversary has no way of stopping it. Once heaven declares, time is up. Number 12, they regret injuring you now that they realize God was watching the whole time. They honestly feel they got away with it. Lies, manipulation, subtle violence, and treachery. They killed so nonchalantly while claiming to be innocent. For them, it was simply another game of control, power, and ego. They assumed no one saw the smear campaigns, guilt trips, and emotional games done behind closed doors. But they failed to account for the fact that God was there in the room and never departed. The same God who knows every hair on your head and gathers every tear you shed like beautiful diamonds was taking notes. Not only observing, but recording every word. They spoke in secret, planned their plans in the shadows, and wore phony smiles while yearning for your collapse. It wasn't concealed from him as they mocked you. Heaven was preparing a case, and the repercussions have come, not as happenstance or karma, but as divine correction. And that correction is unique because God takes it personally when his chosen ones are mistreated. He does not only avenge, he teaches. They are now experiencing the unavoidable consequences of their own actions. Doors are shutting. There is no more peace. Relationships are breaking apart. The worst thing is that they can track it back to you. From the moment they mistreated what heaven supplied till the time they harmed someone God had appointed to benefit them. They now regret it not just for what they have lost, but also because they can feel the judgment. There's no avoiding or evading it. The same individuals who previously mocked your pain are now humbled by their own. And the quiet you hear, it is not peace. It's the weight of conviction, shame, and the understanding that God wasn't just observing. He was saving the receipts. This is not about vengeance. It's not about retribution. It is about justice. God is telling them that injuring his chosen ones has a cost, and the payment is not paid all at once. It pays to see you soar while others crumble under the weight of their own judgments. Number 13, they didn't just lose you. They had lost access to their own breakthrough. They assumed that walking away from you was simply another play, another option in the game. They believed replacing you would be simple, like you were ordinary, as if the part you performed in their lives could be replaced by anybody. They didn't comprehend you were more than simply a person. You were a gateway, a walking link to the next level. Your presence brought favor, insight, and alignment, but they misused it, separated from you, and unintentionally broke their own spiritual momentum. You served as their bridge. God placed you into their lives not just to bless, but also to progress them. They prayed for the doors. You had the key to the tranquility they yearned for. You carried it in your soul. Strategies, insight, and coverage. They have access to all of it due to their connection with you. But instead of acknowledging the divine arrangement, they viewed you as a stepping stone. They went away, certain that they were moving forward. But in reality, they relapsed into patterns they believed they'd outgrown. They are now seeing everyone around you rise, not because you are attempting to stunt them, but because divine order is at work. The same anointing that they dismissed as insignificant is now breaking down boundaries for those who heed it. And that's what hurts most. Seeing the people they thought were beneath them now flying in peace, happiness, and advancement. All because they maintained a respectful relationship with you. They're not dealing with jealousy. It's the sting of divine retribution, with God telling them what they gave up in real time. Not to harm them, but to educate them. Because when you lose someone, heaven has assigned you to be elevated, and it is not only personal, but also spiritual. You don't just lose a relationship, you lose a realm. And now, they're stuck watching the next level stroll right by them, sporting the visage they previously despised. Number 14, your narrative demonstrates that heavenly favor doesn't need validation. It causes remorse on its own. You never asked for recognition. You did not campaign for validation. You weren't in anyone's face attempting to persuade them of your worth. You just remained loyal, quietly performing the job, mending, and truly following in your vocation, even when no one was applauding. And now the same people who ignored you, questioned you, and even attempted to harm your reputation are watching you shine with a light. They cannot touch, explain, or stop. That is divine grace. It doesn't quarrel or yell. It simply comes up and changes the whole environment. Your tale is powerful because it demonstrates that Favre does not require anyone's permission to function. It is not dependent on popular support or public appreciation. It's based on heaven's approval, and that type of favor perplexes people, particularly those who believed they had the right to prevent you. They thought their quiet would silence you. They feared that if they distanced themselves, they would lose influence. They had no idea, however, that your promotion was not dependent on them. It was related to obedience. You continued to show up despite your damaged heart. You continued to exhibit, even when you had nothing left. Even when your faith was dwindling, you continued praying. Now the tables have turned. You did not need to retaliate or expose anybody. God did it for you, strategically, quietly, and forcefully, one breakthrough at a time, one gift after another. And with each step he takes in your life, remorse strikes deeper. Not because you're bragging, but because they found out too late who you really were. They laughed. They had doubts. They dismissed you. But Favre has an unusual knack of making people remember. And yours is the sort that hell respects. Not because you are flawless, but because you are intentional. You carry something everlasting, and they can no longer escape it. Your life is now audible, not from your lips, but from your height. That is the kind of statement that no hater can deny. Everything they attempted to do to break you just proved how impenetrable you were. Lies, treachery, and mocking. It all backfired, and not by your hand, but by divine command. While they were attempting to bury you, God was planting you. And now you are flowering in a season. They never thought you'd survive. You were a godsend. They refused the exit. They disregarded the lifeline they cut off. And now they're living in remorse over a choice they can't change. What they didn't realize is that you weren't battling for affirmation. You were walking an assignment. You were not attempting to prove anything. You were embodying purpose. When someone mishandles a divine mission, there's always a penalty. Your tale demonstrates that God sees everything. He saw your secret tears, private prayers, and quiet strength. And now he's reacting not with petty vengeance, but with unquestionable dignity. You have become the message. You've become the mirror. You've shown that Favre cannot be faked, sabotaged, or silenced. They did not just lose a person. They lost control of their fate. And now, they're stuck watching God set a table for you in plain view. Your radiance does more than simply cure you. It haunts them, not out of spite, but for divine correction. Because when heaven puts someone into your life and you choose to betray them, you don't just cease the connection. You give up the favor that came with it. Allow them to speak. Let them watch. Let them sit silently. Because this is your moment, not to prove them incorrect, but to live in what you've always had. You don't need vengeance. You don't need closure. You do not even need their apologies. You have already won. If this message resonated with you, do not keep it to yourself. Go ahead and subscribe to join a community that sees the unseen and speaks the truth when others won't. Tap the like button to let us know if this connected with you, and leave a comment below. We want to know how your narrative fits because you're not alone in this. And most importantly, share this film with someone who needs a heavenly reminder that they are not insane, damaged, or forgotten. Someone out there is in the midst of a test, and your share may be the lifeline they've been looking for. We're growing, we are gleaming, and we're traveling into heavenly fire together. So remain with us, because what's next, it will blow your head. God bless you. Dear viewers, your support through Super Chat and membership is the only source of income that keeps this channel running. If you want me to continue uploading valuable content without delays and to stay motivated in providing you with the best wisdom, I need your help. Every contribution, big or small, makes a huge difference. Feel free to donate and support Pure Wisdom so we can keep growing together. Your generosity keeps this journey alive.
If you're enjoying the content on Pure Wisdom and find value in the messages we share, I encourage you to subscribe. Based on the latest analytics, 93.9% of viewers are watching without subscribing. By subscribing, you not only stay updated with new content, but also support the channel's growth, allowing us to continue spreading wisdom for the chosen ones. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an important message. Let's build this community together.